Welcome again to 419 Church. So glad that you decided to take just a moment out of your busy schedules just to spend with us here this morning. I think you made a great decision this morning to do just that. But in this Christmas season, as we move into the Christmas season, one of the things that one of the phrases that gets kind of thrown around at Christmas time is peace on earth. Peace on earth. And I don't know about you, but at Christmas time, oftentimes peace is one of the last things that actually gets into my life, right? Because there's just so much extra during this Christmas season. There's so much extra. I mean, you've got to worry about a Christmas tree and what you're going to do about that, whether it's a real one or a fake one or whatever. You've got to find it and get it or dig it out of the attic or whatever. And then you've got to put stuff on it, lights and decorations and all of that, and that takes time. And some of you go the extra mile and you decorate like your whole house and whole yard, and you know, it takes you like days to put up all the lights and everything, right? Weeks, yeah. Some of you. But there's just all of this extra decorating that goes on. And then on top of all the extra decorating that goes on, then you've got to find gifts for people, right? For your family members and whoever else you buy for. Some of you buy for like everyone, and you know, others of you are a little more less than that. But you gotta find gifts for certain people, right? And you know, sometimes it requires driving to a store, and others of you, you know, you just do it right from your phone, but it still takes time, right? And so it's just extra. It's another extra thing to think about. What am I going to get them? And it just takes extra time and extra energy and extra effort. And so oftentimes with all of this extra stuff comes events. You know, some of you were at the parade on Friday night. That was a fun event, but and even though we enjoyed it, for those of us who were there, it was still extra, right? And not only the parade, but there's other extra events and Christmas parties and all of these extra things going on at Christmas time. And I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes it can just get caught up and peace is the last thing on my mind. And really, it's not peace, it's just tiring at times. And there can be, for some of us, there can be some anxiety toward how am I going to get it all done and how am I going to do all this, and I've got to get this gift for this person, and I've still got to decorate that, and I've still got to go to that event and that thing, and there's just all of this. There can be some anxiety for some of us instead of peace. For others of you, it's not all of that. It's you're thinking about the get-together with your family. And you're thinking about the get-together, and as you think about the get-together, you're not thinking about peace at all. You're just hoping there is peace. You know there's not going to be. You know there's going to be some tension because of that one family member, right? No? Yeah, I think so. And so maybe it's not just one family member. Maybe it's a few of them, but there can be some of us. We look to that, and oh yeah, I know that's coming up, and there's this tension, and you know that there's going to be that, and you know that there's not going to be peace because it's the same year after year after year, and perhaps that is a struggle for you during this time. For others of you, you may have recently lost a loved one, and you don't think about peace. You just think this is just hard. It's a hard time of year. It's a hard time of year because when we get together with family, there's somebody who's not here. And maybe for you, it's just hard. And you don't think about peace. It's just hard. For others of you, you may have some extra expenses during this time, not just the decorations and not just the gifts, but maybe there's just some extra things. Maybe your car broke down, or maybe there's some extra medical expenses. There's just some extra. Others of you might have gone to the doctor and got a diagnosis. There's just some anxiety and difficulty as you think about how are we going to do this financially. I don't know if any of this is connecting with you or if any of this is you're thinking about, but oftentimes, it's not just in the Christmas season. Oftentimes for some of us, we feel tension and anxiety and hard circumstances and difficulties at different points in our life. And as we think about that and we go through that, oftentimes, whether it's the Christmas season or not, oftentimes we go looking for peace in all the wrong places. Oftentimes we go looking for peace in that thing. Whether it's a new house, a new car, a new boat, and whatever that thing is, oftentimes we try to have peace in our life, and because we think if we get that thing, then things will be all right. If we get that thing, we'll have peace. Or maybe it's not a thing, maybe it's a relationship. Maybe if I can get the girl or I can get the guy or whatever, then I'll have peace. Or maybe it's not that. Maybe you turn to an addiction. Maybe you turn to alcohol or food or whatever it is. And we go looking for peace in all the wrong places. We go looking for peace. And while those things might bring us a moment of relief or a moment of happiness or just a moment, the truth is, those things can't bring us peace. Those things can't bring us lasting peace. So what do we do? Where do we go to find peace? How do we get peace in our life when oftentimes we can't change our circumstances? Our circumstances are still going to be the same. They're still going to be difficult. You're still going to be missing that loved one. You're still not going to have enough money. You're still not going to have enough time. You're still going to have that relationship that's difficult. So what do you do? Where do you go to find that peace? We're going to look at Isaiah again. Last week we looked at Isaiah. We're going to be back in there, and we're going to look at something he says. He just says a nugget for us in the midst of saying a whole bunch of other stuff, which we're not going to have time to look at all the other stuff today. We're just going to look at the nugget he gives us as he talks about where and how to find peace. And he's able to do that in the midst of Israel was going through difficult circumstances in that time. This is roughly 700 years before Jesus, and Israel was not being run by Israel. They were subservient. And so things were not great. Even though things weren't great, he gives us a nugget of how to find peace. So Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. He says, you, talking about God, you will keep in perfect peace. It's something that God does in you. It's something that God does in you. Now, there's a couple of different kinds of peace. One is having peace with God. And then there's having peace in your circumstances. So peace with God is that God is a holy and just and righteous God. And because of our sin, we were separated from God. And we had no peace with Him. And there was enmity and strife and separation because of our sin. And God said He didn't want it that way. He wanted a relationship with us. He wanted to spend eternity with us. And so God sends his son Jesus to pay for the sin. Because God is just. And the sin had to be paid for. Yeah. And so because God is holy, because God is righteous, because God is just, he sent his son because he did not want to spend eternity without us. He sent his son that we might have peace with God. And so for those of us who accept what Jesus did for us on the cross, dying in our place, taking on our sin, that we might have our sins forgiven, that we might have peace with God and a relationship with him that will last for eternity. That's peace with God. That's how you have peace with God. And if you've never done that, you can just do that by telling God that you accept that Jesus died in your place. And you accept his forgiveness on behalf of what Jesus did for you. And so that's peace with God. But there's also a peace that you can have within your circumstances, within your difficult circumstances that you have. There's a peace that you can have. And he says it's also a divine peace. It's a peace that God will give you. You will keep in perfect peace. In perfect peace. There's this Hebrew idea of, maybe you've heard the word shalom. It's a Hebrew word. And when they're writing this, it's actually, they write the word twice. Shalom, shalom. It's a double peace. It's a double portion of peace. It's a perfect peace. Now this word peace doesn't just mean absence of war. It doesn't just mean absence of conflict. It's that, but more. It's absence of war, absence of conflict, but it's completeness. It's wholeness. It's blessing. It may go well with you. When your circumstances are going crazy, there's just an inner peace. Even though you can't control it. Even though you wish they were different. It says that God can give you a peace in and amongst the difficult circumstances that you're going through. It said, you will keep in perfect peace. But who gets that? Who does God decide to give the perfect peace to? Anyone and everyone? Or those holy people like Mother Teresa and Billy Graham? Or the people that wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning? Who does he give perfect peace? The double blessing of peace to? It says, those whose minds are steadfast. Those whose minds are not focused on their circumstances, but those whose minds are focused on God, who are leaning on God, who are resting on him. Those are the ones who get peace. You've met those people, right? And they wake up in the morning and they watch the news, whether it's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whatever newscast that they're watching, right? We're going to cover all our bases there. And they watch the news and it's not good, right? And then the whole day they're thinking about all the things that aren't good. Their minds are focused on those things. Those are not the ones God gives the perfect peace to. He says, focus on me. Focus on my word. Focus on my promises in and amongst everything that's going on. And so when you see the news story or you hear about the tragic event, let's not get so caught up in those things. Yeah, there are times where we need to be concerned about our circumstances, right? There are times where we need, our car's breaking down and we need a new one. Well, we need to go get a new one. We need to be concerned about the thing. We need to be concerned about our circumstances, but that doesn't mean be so concerned about our circumstances that we forget about God. That means lean on Him, focus on Him in the midst of the circumstance. And then it says, those whose minds are steadfast, are leaning on God, are focusing on God because they trust in you.
Amen.
Because when you're in the circumstance, you're trying to figure it out, and you're trying to figure out what's going on here, focusing on God while still being concerned about the things that you need to take care of. That doesn't mean you just release your responsibility. That doesn't mean you abdicate your responsibility. You still have to take care of things. You still have to be concerned about some things. But you don't trust in those things. And you don't trust in yourself to figure it out. You're focused on God and you're trusting in Him. And sometimes He changes your circumstances. But He doesn't promise to change them.
Amen.
But regardless of what they are, He promises to see you through. And that's when God gives you peace.
Yes.
Perfect peace. A double portion of peace. As hectic as whatever circumstance you can think of. If we're focused on Him, He'll give us that peace. I can remember back before we had kids, Stacy and I were moving and we were looking for a place to stay. We were looking for an apartment, and we were working with a realtor, and she had found us a great apartment. And so because of varying circumstances, we thought that this apartment was great. It was a great location. It was going to be the one that we thought was the one for us. And so we go to see it, and everything worked out. And so she calls the guy, and the realtor calls the guy, and he says, she says they want it, and if they will fill out the paperwork, they can have it. And so that's great. And so we leave there, we go fill out the paperwork, we send it in, and then we don't hear anything for a couple of days. And so finally the realtor calls this guy, and he says he's giving it to someone else. Now, I would like to say that I reacted differently, but I'll just tell you, don't let this get out the room. I was mad. Now, I never called the guy. But between God and I, and between Stacy and I, we had some conversations that I was just mad and frustrated. Didn't understand. And how could he do that? And that's not right. And on and on and on. But we're in the midst of this circumstance, and we still had to figure out a place to stay, right? And so eventually we find another apartment, and we get into it. And as we got to know the area a bit better and the other circumstances and everything, we realized that this new apartment was actually better for us.
Amen.
And at some point, I don't remember how long it was, but at some point, I feel like God spoke to me. Not an audible voice, but just hey, I want to teach you a lesson here. He was like, why you get so worked up? Why'd you let that get to you? Why weren't you focused on me? He's like, I had this. In fact, I had a better place for you. You just needed to trust me. And so since that day, I have got that right every time.
Good for you. Good for you.
See, it's a struggle because there's circumstances, right? And we've got to find and figure out how to get through them. And there are times where I do that and I'm focused on God and I'm at peace and things are fine even though the circumstances around me are not. And there are other times where I forget because I get so focused on the circumstances.
Yeah.
And so I'm preaching to me as much as I'm preaching to you here this morning. And not just in this Christmas season, but throughout the year. Whatever circumstances we're in, whether it's with family or at work or at home, things are not easy. Things are tough and hard and difficult, and there's tension, and there's anxiety and fear, and all of these things. May you and I look to God, keep our focus on Him, and trust Him. And when we do that, He will give us His peace, His divine peace. That, as Paul says, transcends all human understanding. Let's pray. Father, thank you for sending Jesus that we might have peace with you. And God, as we are in difficult circumstances from time to time, God, when we get there, God, help us to remember this. And to focus on you. To lean on you, to trust you. To get us through. Pray this in Jesus' name.